As a landscape photographer, this small device here, the modern mobile phone, is an incredibly important part of my toolkit. Whilst I would never say it's essential to have one of these in order to do landscape photography well, if you're a full-time landscape photographer or someone who takes landscape photography very seriously, I definitely think having one of these will help improve your photography, and I think you'll find it a very useful tool. So at home I've got a computer and a full-size monitor, and that's definitely the best way for me to view and edit my photographs and videos. But I use this small device an awful lot at home, and most importantly out on location too. So I want to discuss that a little bit today, but what I'm going to concentrate on is testing the cameras on this phone, specifically for photography and also for recording videos. So the phone that I'm going to be testing out today is the iPhone 13 Pro. I've just got this literally the other day. I've not really had much chance to use it yet, and it's a significant step up from the previous iPhone that I had. It was a much older model. And when I'm out doing landscape photography, I use my mobile phone an awful lot. It really helps me. I'm obviously checking the weather a lot. At the moment it's saying there's going to be a lot of rain today, and that's certainly true. I'm using a number of dedicated photography apps for things such as working out the position of the sun at certain times of the day and at certain times of the year. I'm also using the map utilities. They help me an awful lot. I sometimes use the camera just to investigate and frame up potential compositions before I get my dedicated camera out. And that's really just touching the surface of what I use it for. In terms of the business side of my photography, if I'm away on trips or out on location, to have internet access and be able to check email and so on is hugely important to me. And also when you're out by yourself, having an actual phone and to be able to message and so on is really important. But what I want to concentrate on today, as I said, are the cameras on this new phone. So I'm very interested to see the quality of the photographs and also the quality of the video. As a content creator, if I'm quite pleased with the quality of the video, I can incorporate that into some of the content that I create, and it will make my work a little bit easier. And in terms of the camera, I'm not expecting this to be fantastic and produce the same results as my full frame camera, obviously. But as they say, the best camera is the one that you have with you, and 99% of the time I will have this phone with me. So I'm quite interested to try out the camera and take some photographs and see that if there's a scene that is absolutely fantastic and this is the only camera that I've got with me, how good a quality image will it actually produce, and would it be good enough for me to maybe produce a small print and hang on my wall? So that's what I want to test out today, and I'm looking forward to it. It's late autumn, we're losing a lot of the leaves, but there's still some fantastic colour, and yeah, I just need to keep my fingers crossed that we don't get too much of this rain. So unfortunately the rain's come on quite heavily, and I've been stuck under this tree seeking shelter for quite a while now. So what I've decided to do is try out the telephoto lens on the iPhone 13 Pro here and just take a shot of these berries on the tree under which I'm sheltering. So I'm going to try and get these nice and sharp in focus and have some background blur. There's some pleasing diagonals in the image with the branches of the tree. I've framed up a 16:9 crop, so I'm going to lose some resolution, but I think that looks best for the image. And on the phone here you can use something new called photographic styles. So you've got a number of these. That's standard, that's rich contrast, vibrant, rich warm and cool, and you can adjust these to your preferences, so you can apply these in real time, tweak them and see how the end result will look. So I think for this one I'm going to use rich contrast. I've adjusted tone ever so slightly and I'm quite happy with that, so we'll leave it there. I'll focus on the berries and take the shot. And what I'm quite keen to test out on this camera is shoot in the Pro RAW format, Apple's RAW format as well, and just see the differences compared to allowing the camera to actually process the image. As you will see, it's removed the photographic style. You can't have those in RAW mode. So again, focus on the berries, take the shot, and I'll edit that one, and it'll be interesting to compare the two and see how the end results look. Again, the rain is falling quite heavily, so I'm trying to stick around an area in which there's some trees so I can get a little bit of shelter, but I found quite a nice composition behind me here in which I want to test out the iPhone 13 Pro's camera. This time I was using the standard lens, the wide lens, and taking a portrait orientation shot of this scene behind me. The autumnal leaves look absolutely fantastic, and they provide some nice framing off to quite a characterful tree in the distance. So quite a nice scene. Again, I've taken a couple of shots using the RAW file format and also using the iPhone 13's processing to edit the image as it sees fit. So we'll see how these turn out. So one of the interesting things about the video capabilities of the new iPhone that I'm testing today is its ability to record video files in the ProRes file format. That's a very high quality file format, but there are a few downsides to that. They take up a huge amount of space. It's not so much of an issue for me while I'm out recording in terms of storage space in the iPhone itself. It's more about long-term storage, so they would eat up hard drives as I'm storing and backing up these files at home. The other issue is that once you've uploaded these files to YouTube and YouTube does further compression on the files, I'm not sure that the end viewer will get the maximum benefit out of these higher quality files. The quality will suffer a bit once it's been put on YouTube. I would of course get the benefit viewing them at home, but the end result to viewers on YouTube, they might not get as nice a quality out of it. So it's something that I will use, but I'll use it sparingly. So at the moment I'm just recording in standard video mode, 4K. So let's switch to ProRes file format now. So this is now recording in the ProRes file format, so it should be a higher quality file, and I've got more capability to do some editing on it once I get into the editing suite. But as I say, something I'll use sparingly and a nice feature to have. So I'm pleased to say that at least for the moment the rain has went off. The sun is trying to break through the clouds, but there's still a lot of ominous rain-filled clouds hanging around, so I'm not confident that it will stay off for too long. So with that in mind, I'm going to head over to these trees behind me here and hopefully find some shelter in there. So I really like this scene here. We've got this wonderful pathway leading through this autumnal scene. It's getting a bit later in the day, it's getting increasingly duller, so the light isn't as good. However, we've got some really nice light on this tree here and it's really making it stand out, so that's working well. We're getting these increasingly heavy rain showers that are sweeping through. We've just had one at the moment and I can see more coming, so I'm probably going to grab this shot and seek some shelter just behind this tree. So it's been a very difficult day for filming today with all the rain. It's been quite windy as well. However, it's getting later in the day, as I spoke about earlier. The rain showers are getting heavier and more frequent, so I think it's time to call it a day for being on location. Time to head to the warmth and comfort of home, review what I've been able to capture today, and we'll take a little look at it in a bit more detail. I'm back indoors now and it was a lot of fun on location doing some testing of the iPhone 13 Pro. But the weather was really challenging that day, so it's nice to be back inside, and now that some time has passed I've had a good chance to look at both the video footage that I captured on that day and also the photographs. And I've been looking at the photographs in terms of the ones in which I let the iPhone 13 Pro do the processing, and I've also been looking at the RAW files and processing those myself. I've even made a couple of prints, such as this one here, so we'll take a look at those later and see how they turned out. But I now feel in a really good position regarding knowing what my phone can do for me in terms of my workflow and the tasks that it will be able to help me with. But it's been really important during my testing on location, but especially when looking at the results on a 5K monitor, just to remember that I'm looking at files which a small device, this one here, has produced. It does so many other things other than take video and photographs. And as I said on location, I use a full frame Nikon Z7 II. It produces really detailed photographs and video, really high quality stuff. And that camera, using lenses such as this, compared to this small device here with these really small lenses and the small sensors that will be inside here, it's really important just to think of the testing as what can this device do, not what can it do compared to a full frame camera partnered with these lenses. I'll begin by talking about the video footage that I captured on location and what I thought of that. And again, firmly keeping in mind that this was done on a phone, I am really impressed. Yes, it's a good quality phone, but it's a phone nonetheless. And I was really impressed with the footage that I captured. I spent most of the day shooting in 4K at 25 frames per second, and I was really impressed. It's definitely something I'm going to be utilising and incorporating into my video work where appropriate. I thought it presented a nice looking video. I was quite pleased with the colours, the way the iPhone handled those. My only complaint, and I guess it's a common complaint with phones, is that I feel the image or the video was just over sharpened a little bit. So that's my only complaint, but other than that I was really impressed. I thought it did a fantastic job, again considering it's this small device here. Regarding cinematic video mode, at the moment at least, I don't know if it will change, but at the moment we are limited to 1080p and 30 frames per second. Again, thinking this has been done on a phone, I thought it was quite a pleasing effect. it worked quite well in certain situations. I did notice at times around the outline of a person, you would get some issues at the sort of the transition point between the person and the background. If you're just careful and if you use this cinematic mode at the right time in the right situations and perhaps don't overuse it, it can certainly be something nice to incorporate into your video work. And finally, regarding video, one thing I'll quickly mention before getting on to that final point is the stabilization. I was quite impressed with that. I took a lot of footage handheld and it was really steady, really smooth, so I really liked that as well. And my final point is regarding ProRes file format. So this is a very high quality format. It lets you do a lot of color grading and so on in post-production. But the downside is the huge files that it creates. Now, looking at this very closely and inspecting it versus standard footage on my 5K monitor, I could see the difference. I could see the file was a higher quality, and as I just talked about, there's much more leeway in post-production for grading and so on. So I was really impressed with that file format. I thought it produced excellent files from which to work with in post-production. But again, this is something I will use sparingly. I talked about this on location, I believe. It just is simply due to the huge file sizes and keeping backups of those. I would eat through hard drive. So definitely something I'll use, but sparingly for the correct moments. So to sum up my thoughts on the video footage that I was able to produce with this phone, I'm really impressed, and I feel that moving forward I'll be able to incorporate this into my overall video work that I do. I was really impressed with the quality, and the only complaint, as I talked about, especially in the 4K mode that I was using, was that I feel the footage was a little bit over sharpened. But I'm really impressed overall, really like the stabilization, and I do like the cinematic mode, although it's something I'll use sparingly. But overall, my impression so far is that I'm really impressed. Now moving on to what I thought of the photographs that I captured using this device. And again, considering it's a small device, tiny lenses here, and it's a device that does so many other things, I was really impressed. Just looking at the quality of the photographs, I was quite impressed considering where they came from. So in terms of letting the iPhone do the processing of your images, I thought it did a good job. We now have photographic styles. We can apply those and tweak them before we actually take the image. There's a lot of software processing going on in the background. And I think a lot of people will get photographs that they're very happy with just by utilizing that. But as a photographer, I like to shoot in RAW file format, and I believe that's the only way for me to realize my vision, to get the images looking just how I want them. So having a look at the RAW files that the iPhone 13 produced in Lightroom, I was very pleased with them. I was able to do the editing to customize them to my own style, the way I wanted them to look, and I was really pleased with the results. I've got a couple of prints to look at. I'll be taking a look at these shortly, but yeah, I'm really pleased with the results, and I'll talk more about that as we move on. And in terms of the standard wide lens, I think that is the best quality. That's what I find when looking at the results. So it produces really nice, sharp, detailed images, and it's definitely the best lens to use, in my opinion. Moving on to the ultra wide, again, I was quite impressed. I was really pleased with the results, and there's plenty of fine detail there. So it's not as good as the wide lens, I don't think, but still very good. And I personally found, at least in the testing that I've done so far, I thought the telephoto lens was the weakest of the three. It's not to say it's bad, it's fantastic to have it, it produces great images, but if you're really pixel peeping and comparing the three lenses, I thought it was the worst quality of the three, but that's not to say it's bad. I just felt it struggled a bit more with fine detail than the other two lenses. And it still produces really nice images, but that's what I found. However, if we have a look at this test shot that I took, I noticed a pigeon up in this autumnal tree. That shows plenty of detail. The very fine, delicate detail on the branches is extremely sharp. but I just found that the telephoto lens and sensor struggled a bit more with very fine detail and foliage, etc. than the other two lenses did. As I said, I've printed a couple of the photographs that I took while on location. So I selected one which I shot with the telephoto lens and I printed that at A4, and I've selected one which I shot with the wide lens and I've printed that at A3 plus size, so that's on paper which is 19 inches by 13 inches. So let's take a look at those, starting with the telephoto shot. This photograph here was captured using the telephoto lens on the iPhone 13 Pro, and I've printed it at A4 size. So typically with an image printed at this size, A4, you would be looking at it from a closer distance. And if you have a good close look at this image, it does look quite nice. I mean, on this tree trunk here, we can see lots of detail in the bark. I think that looks really good. There were some strong winds that day. The wind was blowing from the right, so there was a lot of movement in the grass. You can see some of them bent over in the wind, and you can still make out individual blades of grass. However, if you look really closely and you begin to scrutinize it, you may see a lack of fine detail in all the very small blades of grass and small leaves which were on the ground. And off in the distance, these trees here are perhaps lacking a little bit of detail. But it still looks fantastic, and way off in the distance here there's a fence, and I can see all the individual fence posts and the horizontal parts of the fence as well. There is plenty of detail, and you can make out the individual leaves as well. So it still looks really good. It looks fantastic. I'll be happy to put this on the wall, but just to keep in mind, in my opinion, the results don't look quite as good most of the time as I get from the wide lens. So this photograph was shot using the wide lens on my iPhone, and I've printed it on A3 plus paper size, which is fairly large. It's printed using the full width of the paper apart from these borders, and I've trimmed a little bit at the top and the bottom just to get it looking the way that I would want for a photograph such as this. And I think this one looks really good. Not only does it look good at the appropriate viewing distance, but even if you pick this one up and look at it really closely, I think the detail holds up. So I'm really impressed with this. This area is full of detail. You can see all the individual autumn leaves, some of the grasses here, some of the small bits of branches which have fell off. And it looks really good. There's plenty of detail. You can see the individual grass blades here. You can see detail on these ferns off to the left, some of these leaves. And even looking at the trees in the distance, there's so much detail and texture on their bark and so on, and we can make out the slender trees in the distance. So I think this is really good. If someone just looked at this and didn't know the device that it was captured on, I think most people would be quite pleased with this result, and it's certainly something I'd be very happy to hang on my own wall. To sum up my thoughts on the quality of the photographs that I was able to take with the iPhone 13 Pro, again, I'm really impressed. I want to stress my purpose of doing this is not to compare it to any other phone or any other camera, but just to state the obvious. If I compared the results to what I can achieve with my Nikon Z7 II, of course they're not going to be as good. But just taking them for what they are, if someone just looked at this image, especially the one that I've printed bigger, taken with a wide lens, and you didn't know the device or camera that was used, I don't think anyone would be unhappy with this image. They will look at it and think it looks really good. And this is something that's important to me, because I did say on location, it's fantastic to know that if this phone is the only camera that I've got with me and I see something really nice, I now have the confidence and belief that I can take a shot with that, it's worth taking, and that I can go home and produce a print that I'll be happy and proud to put on my wall. And I think that's really fantastic. And as I said, it's really useful for me to be able to incorporate some of these features into my workflow, and also for the videos and other content that I produce. So overall, I think this is really good. The results are really pleasing, both for the bigger image and also this smaller one here shot with the telephoto lens. So How does the iPhone achieve such good results? Well, although the sensors and the lenses are very small, I believe they'll be very good quality. But I also think there's a fantastic amount of very intelligent software processing going on in the background, and it really helps produce good results. Perhaps it shoots above its weight, you could say. It produces results which are better than you'd expect for such a small device. So I think that concludes my thoughts on the iPhone 13 Pro. It's certainly been a very useful exercise for me to go out and test this phone on location and see what I can do in terms of video work and also in terms of taking photographs. And I certainly hope it's been useful for some of you watching if you're interested in perhaps considering a purchase of this phone at some point in the future. But as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch. I really do appreciate it. If you're not yet subscribed to my channel, do consider subscribing to see my future videos, and hopefully I will see you in my next one.